Evam Gajendram Upavarnita Nirvishesham Brahmadayo Vividalinga Vidhabhimanaha Naite Yadopasarpas Harina Virasit Shri Shuka Uvacha Evam Gajendram Upavarnita Nirvishesham Brahmadayo Vividalinga Vidhabhimanaha Naite Yadopasarpur Nikilatmakatvat Tatra Kilamara Mayumavira Virasit Shri Shuka Uvacha Evam Gajendram Upavarnita Nirvishesham Brahmadayo Vividalinga Vidhabhimanaha Naite Dopasasapur Nikilatmakatvat Viravirasit. Word to word translation. Shri Shuka Uvacha. Shri Shukadeva Goswami said, Evam, in this way, Gajendram, unto the king of the elephants, Gajendra. Upavarnita, whose description, Nirvishesham, not directed to any particular person, but to the Supreme, although he did not know who the Supreme is. Brahma Adayaha, the demigods beginning with Brahma, Shiva, Indra and Chandra. Vivida, varieties. Linga Bhidha, with separate forms. Abhimanaha, considering themselves separate authorities. Na, not. Ete, all of them. Yada, when. Upasasrupuhu, approached. Nikila Atmakatvat, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the super soul of everyone. Tatra, there. Akila, of the universe. Amaramayaha, consisting of the demigods who are only external parts of the body. Harihi, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can take away everything. Avirasit, appeared before the elephant. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Sri Shukadeva Goswami continued. When the king of the elephants was describing the supreme authority without mentioning any particular person, he did not invoke the demigods headed by Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra and Chandra. Thus none of them approached him. However, because Lord Hari is the super soul, Purushottama, the personality of Godhead, he appeared before Gajendra. Purport. From the description of Gajendra, he apparently was aiming at the supreme authority, although he did not know who the supreme authority is. He conjectured, there is a supreme authority who is above everything. Under the circumstances, the Lord's various expansions, such as Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Chandra and Indra, all thought, Gajendra, is not asking our help. He is asking the help of the Supreme, who is above all of us. As Gajendra has described, the Supreme Lord has various parts and parcels, including the demigods, human beings, and animals, all covered by separate forms. Although the demigods are in charge of maintaining different aspects of the universe, Gajendra thought that they were unable to rescue him. Harim vina naiva mrutim taranti. No one can rescue anyone from the dangers of birth, death, old age, and disease. It is only the Supreme Personality of Godhead who can rescue one from the dangers of material existence. Therefore, an intelligent person, to get free from this dangerous existence, approaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not any demigod. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7.20, Kamaistaiste hutagnanaha prapadyante anya devataha. Those who are unintelligent approach the various demigods for temporary material benefits. Actually, however, these demigods cannot rescue the living entity from the dangers of material existence. Like other living entities, the demigods are merely external parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's transcendental body. As stated in the Vedic mantras, Sa Atma Angani Anya Devataha. Within the body is the Atma, the soul, whereas the various parts of the body, like the hands and legs, are external. Similarly, the Atma of the entire cosmic manifestation is Narayana, Lord Vishnu, and all the demigods, human beings, and other living entities are parts of his body. It may also be concluded that since a tree lives on the strength of its root, and when the root is nourished with water, all the parts of the tree are nourished, one should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the original root of everything. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very difficult to approach, he is very near to us because he lives within our hearts. As soon as the Lord understands that one is seeking his favor by fully surrendering, naturally he immediately takes action. Therefore, although the demigods did not come to the aid of Gajendra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead immediately appeared before him because of his fervent prayer. This does not mean that the demigods were angry with Gajendra, for actually, when Lord Vishnu is worshipped, all the other demigods are also worshipped. Yashmin tushte jagat tushtam. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead is satisfied, everyone is satisfied. Yatha tharor mula nishechanena trupyanti tatskanda bujhopashakaha pranopaharacha yathendriyanam tateva sarvarhanam achyutejya. As pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, so simply worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of that Supreme Personality. Bhagavatam 4:31.14. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped, all the demigods are satisfied. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yenam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shpate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Sadarine Prabhu Nityananda Yadvaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gauravaktarunda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sri Shukadeva Goswami continued. When the king of the elephants was describing the supreme authority, without mentioning any particular person, he did not invoke the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, and Chandra. Thus, none of them approached him. However, because Lord Hari is the super soul, Purushottama, the personality of Godhead, he appeared before Gajendra. So we see here, this is the Gajendra Moksha story. Now, in this story, we are seeing how Gajendra was King Indradyumna in his previous life. Last class we talked about how he was cursed by Agastya Rishi for actually no fault of his, and he was forced to take the body of this elephant. And then when the crocodile caught hold of his feet, Lord Gajendra offers very wonderful prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He remembers some of these prayers that he was saying in his previous life, and he offers prayers. Now, the interesting thing over here is that he did not know who the Supreme Personality of Godhead was. He was not saying, "Oh Krishna, Vasudeva, Krishna, please rescue me," or "Vishnu, please rescue me." He was just addressing the Supreme Authority. And that is why it is said in this particular verse, very nicely Prabhupada is explaining that because the Lord is present in everyone's heart as Paramatma, He knows what is the exact prayer being offered, and that is why we see there is a reciprocation of the Lord, and He's appearing as appearing there to rescue Gajendra here. So, one of the important takeaways that we see in this verse is that the Paramatma is present in everybody's heart. Right? And so, in terms of spiritual advancement, in terms of a spiritual life, we really cannot fool the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You will get what you want. The problem is, most of us don't know what we want. We think we want something, and we run after, this and that. See, if you really go and analyze very deeply from a Shastric perspective, the Shastras explain that the quality of Sat Chit and Ananda only exists with an Atma or a spiritual, for the spirit soul. There is no Ananda in matter. Right? Now, matter, if there is no Ananda in matter, why do we get pleasure out of matter? Maybe temporary pleasure. But temporary also, see, how can you get temporary also? If there is no pleasure, how can you get temporary pleasure? Under illusion, we think that there is a pleasure. Actually, that's not a technical answer. Hmm. Cessation of miseries is so-called pleasure. Prabhupada explains in places how in material world, he's talking about the sequencing of those pleasures, how often it, this thing occurs. But technically speaking, there is one more layer beneath that. See, the Atma's nature is Satchidananda. Sat, eternal. Chit, it's full of knowledge. Ananda means full of bliss. So Ananda is is one of the potencies of the Atma. So we have to take Ananda that actually belongs to us and go and give it to some material thing. And then you run behind it to get that material thing. And that is the only way, even temporarily, like you said, even for a small moment, like cessation of miseries, we say this thing, but it is only by taking our own Ananda, which we are fully experiencing within ourselves, because it's our nature, and we have to give it to some matter and run behind it. See, when we really, technically we can understand, theoretically we can understand, but when you practically understand this, it completely changes our way of thinking. Right? Completely changes the way of thinking. Like, what is the fundamental change that happens? If you say that, it's your own Ananda and you're giving behind it. Think about it. You don't have to, you don't need anything external for experiencing happiness. Happiness is, in the Atma. Right? Now, when you think about happiness is in the Atma, not just individual, our own Atma, but it is also in the Paramatma. Anything spiritual can have happiness. Nothing material can have happiness. So, we have to go find that source of that innate happiness and experience that. You see, technically speaking, again, when you think about even Mayavadis or Dhyanis, those Ashtanga Yoga they are doing, they are experiencing some Brahmananda. That experience of Brahmananda is the Ananda that is present in the individual living entity. But again here, Prabhupada explains that we are like particles of gold. And Krishna is the mine, gold mine. Right? So when we experience, when we are chanting the holy name, when we're looking at the deities, when we are in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we have that opportunity to connect to that supreme source of Ananda. Now, until and unless we understand this basic principle, we will keep running behind all kinds of different things that we give value to. Right? I keep giving example. It's not even very old, about 150 years ago. 150 years ago. Right? Anybody knows what was the cost of one pineapple? In today's dollars. It used to be between, cheapest was $5,000. It was between $10,000 and $15,000. Cost of one pineapple. Okay. So, if today pineapple costed 5,000, let's say cheap, Christmas sale is going on, it's $5,000. Would any of us eat pineapple? No, right? In fact, it is said that in the 150 years ago, even the super rich people, most people, right, they would buy a pineapple and they would keep it in the center. Like, you call a party of everybody, it should be nicely kept in the center. So I can afford a pineapple. And, but they wouldn't cut it because they wanted to preserve it for as long as they can keep it, kind of a thing. And then as a delicacy, they would, this thing. But the same pineapple today, $1, maybe $3, $5 at the most. And everybody can eat. Anybody now craves after a pineapple? Right? Sometimes, these examples help understand, like the fallacy of the whole social system that we have created. See, we are so much caught up in this rat race of always running behind, busy. We don't even know what we are running after. We don't even know what are we busy about. That is the unfortunate nature of this Kali Yuga mentality. As Kali Yuga progresses, this intensity of this material fever keeps increasing. Now, Prabhupada used to say, it's like the advancement of so-called advancement of civilization, all you're doing is you're increasing the fever. So, one has to step back and think for a second, what exactly are we running after? What is happening over here? So Gajendra here is giving us a wonderful example of like how to break out of this cycle. Paramatma is present in everybody's heart, and Paramatma can actually reciprocate with every living entity based on our desire. We should at least, as living entities, we have had the good fortune of coming in touch with Srila Prabhupada. Right? And we may not be able to practice pure devotional service, but we have been given a glimpse of what pure devotional service is, what is the proper consciousness. And so at least what we should do is we should say, oh Krishna, I'm not able to, but at least, please help me get this mood of pure devotional service. And when we have that sincerity of heart, something in the heart says, okay, that's why Bhagavatam we talk about akamo, sarvakama, mokshakama, tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Doesn't matter whether we are full of kama, we are akama, or we are mokshakama, does not matter. Just intensely worship the Lord and say, oh Krishna, please help me. If the sincerity of desire is there, and the sincerity of purpose is there, then just like here, the Lord, because he is present as Paramatma in the heart of Gajendra, he appeared over there. And then actually it is very interesting to see what happened after that. Next verse, I'll just read the translation. After understanding the awkward condition of Gajendra, who had offered his prayers, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who lives everywhere, appeared with the demigods who were offering prayers to him. Carrying his disc and other weapons, he appeared there on the back of his carrier Garuda with great speed according to his desire. Thus he appeared before Gajendra. Text 32. Gajendra had been forcefully captured by the crocodile in the water and was feeling acute pain because what had happened? The crocodile had caught onto his feet, and it was not some 1 hour, 1 minute, 10 minutes, thousands of celestial years. This battle was going on, and Gajendra was exhausted. But when he saw Narayana wielding his disc, was coming in the sky on the back of Garuda, he immediately took a lotus flower in his trunk, and with great difficulty due to his painful condition, he uttered the following words: O my Lord Narayana, Master of the universe, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Text 33. Thereafter, seeing Gajendra in such an aggrieved position, the unborn Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, immediately got down from the back of Garuda by his causeless mercy and pulled the king of the elephants along with the crocodile out of the water. Then, in the presence of all the demigods who were looking on, the Lord severed the crocodile's mouth from its body with his disc. In this way, he saved Gajendra, the king of the elephants. He said that, the Supreme Lord, is seeing that he's offering this lotus flower. See, look at that, the presence of mind of Gajendra. Supreme Lord is coming. I have to offer something to the Lord. Okay? And with great difficulty, even though he's exhausted and it's so painful, he just took out a flower and offered. So the Lord caught him by his trunk and then pulled him out. It is said that as soon as the Supreme Lord touched Gajendra, Gajendra got a form that was similar, Sarupya Mukti. He got Sarupya Mukti. He got a form that was very similar to the Lord, in a bluish complexion with yellow garments, forearms, beautiful features. And immediately he got liberated, being touched by the Supreme Lord. That is the beauty of the mercy of the Supreme Lord. In fact, Gajendra in his prayers says something very interesting. He says, text 19. After worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, those who are interested in the four principles of religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation obtain from him what they desire. What then is to be said of other benedictions? Indeed, sometimes the Lord gives a spiritual body to such ambitious worshippers. May that Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unlimitedly merciful, bestow upon me the benediction of liberation from this present danger and from the materialistic way of life. We see many times, even people who are inimical to the Lord, just because they're in the presence of the Lord, they also get, even demons get liberated. So that's why Gajendra is telling. Sometimes the Lord gives a spiritual body to such ambitious worshippers. But here is referring to, those who are after, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Even for those people, the Supreme Lord gives liberation. So what to talk about? Pure devotees. That is why, when we in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Ramananda Raya is having conversations with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he's talking about all the different, ways to attain the Supreme. What is higher? What is higher? The first there's talk about, you worship the Lord in Varnashrama, in Daivi Varnashrama itself. Varnashrama, you please the Lord through Varnashrama. Then, oh, that's okay. Yeah, you can attain the Lord through that, but what next? Tell me something better. Tell me something better. Tell me something better. Goes on and on. And so we see in the Chaitanya Charitamrita such a clear description of what in our parampara, what we are aiming for. It is not something ordinary. It is very, very extraordinary. What we are aiming for is higher than what even Gajendra got. Gajendra is so famous. It was Indradumna Maharaj. He was such a exalted devotee. But he only got Swarupya Mukti. He went to the Vaikuntha Lokas. In the Gaudiya Vaishnava Parampara, we are aiming to be Gopi Bhartu Pada Kamalayor Dasa Dasa Anu Dasa. We are aiming for something even higher. And only by mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that we get that opportunity to aim for something high, and we can actually get to achieve it, as Prabhupada says, even in this lifetime itself. So that is why the biggest takeaway from this chapter, from this verse, is that in our heart, we have to be clear what we want. We have to be focused in what we want. If you're doing a show bottle practice of spiritual life and have all kinds of material desires and this and that, and then say, a little bit I'll do also some devotional life, that's what you will get. So one has to be very careful what desires we are cultivating, because once you start cultivating these desires, and it's very difficult for us to even perceive that we have this problem, and we get caught up in that world. Okay, so very wonderful lesson from this 8th canto discussion of Gajendra, and some nice lessons for us to practice in our life. We'll stop here. Anybody has any quick questions or comments? Yes. How do we stay focused? Having one goal. The Prabhupada talks about it in a very nice example when he talks about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's taking sannyas. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu takes sannyas, what is his wife's name? Vishnupriya, right? So she was 16 years old at that time, and he was 24 years old. And it is said that when he took sannyas, she also took up a very strict vow. And in fact, it is said that her vow was stricter than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's sannyas. Right? Recently, Vasudev Prabhu was sharing in a lecture. I had not heard of this before, so it was very wonderful to hear. She would chant one round of Hare Krishna, and then after finishing a round, she would take one grain of rice and keep it aside. And then she would chant one more round, and she would keep one more grain of rice. And so, the number of rounds she would have chanted, that many grains of rice would be gathered at the end of the day. She would take those and cook, and then that's the prasadam she would honor. That is the level of austerity that she practiced after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas. And so Prabhupada was writing a letter to one of his Mataji disciples who had asked, Prabhupada, what should I do? He said, you should practice like Vishnu Priya. Then, understanding our limitations, he gives a little bit of leeway. After that, he says, your strictness in practicing your routine services and your routine devotional service will show your steadfastness. So that is why, we should have that level of, interest and desire to practice tapasya. But the tapasya should be shown in our routine. So how do we stabilize our spiritual practices or sadhana? How do we do our simple assigned services in full enthusiasm and this thing, right? We all agree that this is an easier method than just chanting and taking one grain. You can eat nice feast, no problem. But whatever your daily sadhana is, do it in a full enthusiasm, full determination. Right? Eke ha krunandana, bahushaka yanantascha. What happens is we get so much caught up in this and that and this. We want to do new things, we want to read new stuff, we want to do all the variety, this, that. We just caught up in so many things, the fundamentals get lost. So the way to become fixed up is to fix our fundamentals. And by becoming fixed in that, you will see, if you're fixed in the fundamentals, then by the mercy of Guru and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Guru, Gauranga and Krishna, will become fixed up. Jantrat Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Bol Premanand.
Vande